Welcome to the next lesson, case study number 10, online store platform. Let's get started. Sarah owns a small business that makes handmade jewelry. She sells her products at local markets and through word of mouth. She wants to reach more customers by creating a simple online store. Sarah needs an application to manage her inventory, process orders, and allow customers to make secure purchases. She is seeking a reliable and scalable solution to help her business grow. Here are her requirements. Sarah can manage products by adding, updating, or deleting item details. Customers can browse products and access detailed information. The system processes orders, calculates costs, and tracks pending, ship, and complete statuses. The system enables online customers to pay for goods directly on the website. The system provides the ability to generate reports on demand as well on a regular schedule and can make it available via email or online download. All right, let's go to the design. As always, we start with the user because that's what we're building systems for. So first, even though this is not here exactly, anytime you're dealing with like payments and things of that nature, 9 out of 10 times you do want to have an authentication concept. Usually, like there are times where there's an exception, but we're going to put this here because we need that. And also we wanted the ability for Sarah to to be able to log in to the admin part of this, to be able to manage products and add, update, and delete details. And also you're thinking that she has a growing business. She may have people that are, she might hire over time. They might have specific responsibilities to manage the store. You want to be able for them to have their own accounts so they can do things. So it's like, again, when you're building systems, it's always good to try to think in the future what could happen. And, you can definitely talk to the stakeholder. And of course, their opinions are, the most important. But then also, it's a partnership. You help them kind of think about like, oh, what are some of the things they may not have thought of in building the system. So that's why we're going to put our trusty authentication service. You'll notice that there's like a number of kind of combinations that come up all the time. Authentication service is definitely one of them. So if I can just copy this, here we go. I'm going to type in authentication service, make this bigger. All right, cool. And then of course, we're going to have a web service connected to all of this as well, where people will see that interface, so web service. Okay. Now, also, you can just imagine that it's going to be, if we're going to have a lot of data that needs to be held in a very strict format. We can talk about items, orders, transactions. We're going to make sure that these pieces of data are accurate. So that's where a relational database shines. So we're going to have our relational database here. And this database is going to hold a few things. So first, we're going to call it, we have our data layer service. But then I've given these data layers like multiple names to try to give you a sense of like what else it can hold or what the data layer service consists of. And here I have a store management service. So you think about all of the items that are being put in that, let's say Sarah is adding or subtracting from it. This is the data we'll have that as well. And then you have, remember there's in the last requirement, talked about generate reports. You have a report management service, which also has the information on what report should be generated when and how. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But note that we have these things. And then let's go ahead and connect this stuff together. Authentication service to the web service, connects to the data layer service. Now, we also can think that, when you have an online store, there usually is some sort of image, maybe even videos showing what the products are. You're going to have some like media assets of some kind. So it would make a lot of sense to have our, our raw raw file service as well. You have a service connect to a file store, goes into files, and we'll call that the raw file service. But as well, with multiple names, a product image service. I just kind of want to put it in your mind of like, oh, think of that as like, oh, all the images of the products. At least we need that, right? There's other scenarios for this, but we absolutely need that. So okay, so we have that, and then we'll have the web service connect to this as well. Now, so so if you're thinking that with what we have so far, ooh, hold on, that's a funky looking connection. Let me do that again. Right. Okay. All right. So this is good, right? We know what we're doing. We're saying that you can manage products by adding, updating, and deleting details. Browsers can browse products and access detailed information, can pre-process orders, calculate costs, and track pending shipping and completed statuses. That's another thing I could put over here. That's part of that store management service. This can cover a lot of these things to be able to see what things are. You have all the data of all the products in here that can be managed by Sarah as well when she authenticates. All the images are here. This web service can handle showing the pages for this, for each of these brands and things of that nature. So this could handle that viewing. But then there's two other, key requirements that without it doesn't really make this an online store. One is to enable online customers to pay for the goods directly on the website. Like they need to be able to buy it. And if you want to do that, if you remember from a previous case study, we want to do social payments. Payments is a very complicated concept. You have credit cards, you have bank accounts, you have a number of other things, especially if you go international, whereas sometimes it's best to leave that to an external service that focuses on it, that updates, that keeps update with all different legal ramifications or technical ramifications, so on. So we go ahead and use that. But again, we surround the external service with our own service so that we define our own way of interacting with that service in a generic way for our own platform, so that if we need to switch APIs, switch external resources, we can do that. And also makes it easier to test, to make sure that I can test the endpoints that we've written ourselves in our own service. And if we know if that's valid, then we know that the external API is good. So we have this. Oh, sorry. Let me go ahead and copy one of these text things. Put this over here. And this is called the external banking service. All right, service. Spell that correctly. All right, and the web service will be connected to that. So right now we have this idea that, okay, now we can have our items, and then now users can come in, they can log in, they can have their own account, they can save their banking ideas, their banking information as well, and they can purchase things. This can manage deliveries and so on and so forth. So we can go ahead and do that. Right now, though, this online store say that it can manage the status, but there's this inherent assumption is that Sarah's managing that aspect. Now, let's say if we were to say we're gonna add the ability to I don't know, have a drop ship concept that you can go ahead and after you purchase in an online store, Sarah has the ability to go to another company that makes the stuff and can ship it, then that would, that's called, sometimes it's called a drop ship method. And then we would add another external service with external service backed by our own service that enables to do that. I'm not adding that here because right now this is Sarah's, very right now it's it has a local store being publicized by word of mouth. She personally mailing these things, so therefore that integration is not here, but that is something that we could expand into the future. But anyway, right now that people can purchase. Now we have 4 of these here, but then now we have this idea of reports. We want to make sure that reports can be delivered on demand and on a regular schedule. This is really important to Sarah. She wants to grow. She wants to see how her site is doing. Maybe she hires new people. They may need to see the reports and so on and so forth. So here's the thing is that you have the on-demand concept and a regular schedule. That's something to keep in mind here. So first though, let's talk about okay, if I want to create a report, I can view it, click on run report, and it can generate on demand. One thing we can do here is we put a queue next to a worker, and we call it, hold on. Oh man, my copy paste skills. Let's do this one. We call this the report generation service. So the idea here is that if we need a report, the web service sends a message to this queue, and then a worker will spin up and will generate the report based on the information on the database. So you'll see that this service here was connected to this, and then this will also has to be connected to the data layer service so that it has that information in order to generate the service. Now remember, it said that they wanted to be able to either make it available via email or online download. We're going to add 2 more aspects then to handle both of those scenarios. For each of those scenarios, I should say, we have a queue with a worker, and we've used this in previous ones, but before. Remember the 2-factor code email worker? Well, we're going to have a report email worker that if we want to like email somebody and then have that generate a report as an attachment, we send a message with the queue with that information, we send that out, and that's something that we can do. And then we also, though, at the same time, if somebody wants to just straight up download it, we want to make sure that we store it somewhere, but make sure that that's actually also available via external URL to be downloaded. So we have a report download service over here, okay? And we'll make sure that this report generation service is connected to both. Hold on. So we'll go ahead and connect it to here. Then we also connect it to here. And then both of these will be connected to the user, so they can either get that email or to get that download link that, let's say, will be available for like 7 days or what have you, and then it's automatically deleted for security purposes. So all of a sudden now you have this aspect that like, oh, if I want to have a report, the web service sends a message to the queue, spins up a worker, and goes ahead and generates the report. Now you may be thinking, okay, if it's just Sarah, do we really need a queue for this report generation service? Can the web service kind of just do it and send it to an email worker and so on and so forth? And if it's just like on demand and it's only Sarah, how many times are you going to click on a report? Is this queue overkill? That's a fair point. And if that was all that was asked for, I would argue that might not be the worst. That wouldn't be a bad system, to be quite honest with you. That perhaps it might be best to just let the web service handle it since it's infrequent. However, let me delete this one. The requirement says that a regular schedule and on demand. That makes me think that, like, imagine if depending on all the different schedules and how the combination is, that could easily and unknowingly become taxing to a single web service that's also handling looking at all of the being available for people to buy items on an online store, so on and so forth. So this is why we put the queue, because what we're gonna have is we're gonna have a time aspect connected to a worker. We're gonna call these schedule workers. And this is the interesting thing that happens, schedule, because there's a lot of ways to solve this problem. I just want to say this, but I'm solving it this way because I think it's more intuitive. The idea here is that this schedule workers will be connected to this data layer service. When somebody in the web service, like let's say Sarah comes in and wants to schedule, so you're like, oh, I want to have this report every day at 7 a.m., right? That information saves in the data layer service, in the report management service. This schedule worker pings this, does a query, let's say every hour, what have you, or every 15 minutes to see like, hey, is there any reports needing to be created right now? When there is, it spins off a worker, and that worker sends a note into the queue. The cool thing is since we made this a queue, a generic queue, the web service doing on demand and the scheduled workers, the scheduled worker saying, hey, it's time for a report is the same message. This report generation service doesn't have to know whether it's scheduled or on demand. It doesn't care. All it cares about, hey, do you have a report you want me to generate now? Just put in the queue. So when we put it in this queue, it dissociates this concept of and abstracts this concept of report generation to what if you send me a message in this queue, I'll create the report that you specified. So when I add the queue there because we can add, we can easily just slot in the scheduled workers without adding another service just for scheduled report generation, if that makes sense. And this is again, if we can simplify our design, it's always better. So first off, give me some time to make this look a little bit better, because that's a little confusing. Hold on, let me just do this. I'll delete that. Maybe I'll put it underneath here. Maybe I'll put it on top. Okay, I think maybe that's a little better. Let's see. And I can move this down. No. Okay, I think what might be a better route is go somewhere else. Maybe we'll just do it here. Wow, who knew that like some of the hard part is just getting these things to connect. All right, let's go ahead. I'm gonna move this to the front. And then let's do it from bottom. Maybe the bottom might be better. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, cool. So we have the scheduled workers, right? Okay, and then they just directly just put into the report generation service. And now we have our system here. So we have the ability, to the data layer service and the raw file service gives the ability to have like a store with images and prices that you can pay for. The external banking service enables users to pay for it directly. And then this whole report generation service gives the ability to on demand or on schedule create services just by sending a message either from the web service on demand or from scheduled workers that's already saved in the admin area. We have email workers for sending directly the email and attachment, or report download service where it can be saved for 7 days and then sent over. And this is our system that handles these requirements. All right, so let's go to our key takeaways. First key takeaway. Here, we again use a service building block as a layer over the database. We call this a data layer service, and a service layer over the transaction payment API. We call this the external banking service. We provide a data layer service with another name, the store management service, since this database will contain key data like product descriptions, price, transaction logs, and so on. Second key takeaway. When creating reports, we often need to transform data into a specific format. The system uses a queue connected to workers report generation service to change the data into the required format and either store the data in the report download service, which allows the user to download the report, or email the report as an attachment using the report email workers. Third key takeaway. When Sarah schedules a report, the system saves the date it will send to the data layer service, also called a report management service. The system can also save periodic reports, like the first of every month. The scheduled workers pings the database every 15 minutes to determine if any reports are ready to be generated. The scheduled workers send a message for each report ready to be generated to the report generation service, which then kicks off the creation of the report. It also sends data on whether the report is downloaded or emailed. Thank you so much. I'll see you at the next one.